Come on, Adam. It's always the US. Okay, folks, we're going to get started. Welcome everyone to the V20 Climate Prosperity Fellows Program event tonight. My name's Kevin Gallagher. I'm the director of the Boston University Global Development Policy Center. Our mission is to advance policy-oriented research on financial stability, human well-being, and environmental sustainability across the globe. We were founded in 2017, and we have 3 different research programs. One's called the Global Economic Governance Initiative, which is why we're all over the place this week. Another one called the Global China Initiative that looks at China's overseas economic activity. And a third one called the Human Capital Initiative that looks at the impacts of investments in education and health in people around the world. It's great to have everyone here today. Let me tell you a little bit about the V20 Fellows Program. We founded it in Marrakesh last year at the World Bank IMF meetings to work with the V20, who we've been partnering with for a long time, on creating more breadth and depth across the V20. We started a seminar series and it was a highly competitive fellowship program. We have folks from Bhutan, Fiji, Honduras, Haiti, Kenya, Ghana, and many others. I didn't mention that we'll hear from today. We've been meeting with these folks every week, doing technical work on some level, helping them figure out modeling to finance their climate prosperity programs, but also doing work on the politics and the political economy of how a small group of vulnerable nations can get their actions implemented in international arenas. The GDP Center anchors it, and we work in collaboration with SOAS, and Uli Vols is the director of the Climate Finance Institute there. It's been great to partner with them and with the support of the Rockefeller Foundation in the group. So you're going to hear from a handful of our fellows today, and then they're going to go back and work with their ministries really hard over the weekend. And then they're all coming up to Boston, and they'll spend all next week with us. Some of them will be dealing with absent-minded professors like myself doing technical work, but we also have the former president of Mexico, the former president of Costa Rica, as well as former executive directors from the Global South at the World Bank, and G20 Sherpas, where we'll be basically providing a capstone experience for their entire fellowship that they've had, rounding off some of the technical work, but then doing a lot of simulations and engagement on how to build better coalitions to get more climate action from the global north. I'm very excited to introduce our first speaker, the Honorable Fatimatu Abubakar. She is the Minister for Information in Ghana. She's a lawyer, and prior to that, she was a Deputy Communications Director at the Office of the President and Jubilee House and Deputy Minister of Information, respectively. She previously served the then candidate Nana Akufo-Addo as a campaign aide. Before venturing fully into politics, she works at Lansdowne Resort, Aburi, and SRM Engineering Limited, where she served as a house manager and administrator, respectively. She studied psychology and English language in her first degree at the University of Ghana in Legon. She continued to Mount Crest University College, where she had her LLB, and proceeded to the Ghana Law School to study professional law and was called to the bar in 2020. Since November 2022, she's been pursuing an LLM. You're a minister and you're pursuing an LLM. Wow. In international dispute resolution and international natural resources law at the University of London. She was a spokesperson for the legal team of the respondents in the 2020 presidential elections, and mentored and continued to mentor many young girls, especially girls from the north and various zongos across the country, because she deems herself as one. She aims to inspire as many young women as possible to take the right path and also to help them make bold career and life choices for a better future. Beyond politics and law, she's an entrepreneur and who relents not in her pursuit and advancement of her own businesses. She's currently the UNHCR Ghana partner for the Ramadan campaign for refugees. And she believes it is prudent and right to drag along the youth on the ladder of success, hence her conscious effort to surround herself with such, a move she strongly believes to make a firm statement. Well, that's a perfect person to help introduce and open up tonight's event, because this is the spirit that we have with the V20 to create a new generation of leaders, both across and within the V20. Minister.
Thank you so much. I am sure that introduction is longer than my speech, but I must say I'm really excited to be here with you this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, welcome to the V20 Climate Prosperity Fellowship Program high-level event. As we convene in the spirit of collaboration and shared resolve, we are reminded of the critical juncture at which we stand today. An era defined by unprecedented climate challenges, yet presented with unparalleled opportunities for innovation, resilience, and collective action. Under the chairmanship of Ghana, the V20 launched the Climate Prosperity Fellowship Program at the annual meeting last October in Marrakesh. The fellowship program seeks to advance cooperation and engagement of officials from V20 member countries to address the challenges posed by an unfit-for-purpose global financial architecture and catalyze ambitious development positive climate action through climate prosperity plans. We are the Global Development Policy Center anchoring this fellowship with the support of other partners like SOAS University of London. The fellowship program is aligned with the Accra to Marrakesh agenda and focuses on its 4 key pillars: make debt work for the climate, transform the international and development financial system, a new global deal on carbon financing, and revolutionize risk management for our climate-insured world economy. The fellows have a unique opportunity to translate this ambitious agenda into a reality. Only through our hard work back home will we be able to move the needle. Throughout this fellowship period, I know the fellows have been working on various hands-on activities, whether it's incorporating climate change into debt sustainability analysis or advancing ideas on making the debt architecture more fit for purpose. I am heartened to see the fellows' deep commitment using their existing positions to think outside the box to advance innovative solutions for realizing the prosperity agenda enshrined in CPPs. The climate crisis is here. It is urgent, and this fellowship recognizes this urgency by engaging directly with officials from finance ministries across our membership so that we can put ideas into action as soon as possible. Through our discussions, supported by our distinguished panelists and the expertise of our partners at the Boston University Global Development Policy Center and the Center for Sustainable Finance at SOAS University of London, we seek to forge pathways that will lead to substantive support from international institutions and donors for country-owned CPPs. Our goal is clear: to catalyze ambitious, development-positive climate actions that transcend traditional boundaries and set a new precedent for international cooperation. As I was just saying to the fellows, the V20 is only as strong as our collective networks. And I know that this fellowship program will provide the necessary glue that will hold us together as we strive to make our countries prosperous in a climate insecure world. Ladies and gentlemen, as we move forward with today's agenda, let us engage openly in our discussions, fostering a dynamic exchange of ideas that will enrich our understanding and sharpen our strategies. This event is not just a conversation, but a call to action, a call to transform our vulnerability into strength and our plans into achievements. Thank you for your commitment to this vital cause, and I look forward to a productive and inspiring session. I thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, great to see you all. For some of you I worked with before, many of you I haven't. My name is Alok Sharma. I used to be president of COP26, and more recently I have joined the Rockefeller Foundation as a climate and finance fellow. And as you know, Rockefeller is supporting this. We're very happy to do that. I think we've got a fabulous set of panelists, and we're going to have a proper discussion. And I'm looking forward to some proper questions from the floor as well. So nobody looking at your phones and tweeting or whatever else people normally do at these sessions. So I'm going to ask the panel to come up. And so I think if we could first have Isatu, would you please come up here? And then Namiso, John, and Adam, and Paolo at the end. Do you all have mics, or we have one between us? Okay, you have. Okay, excellent. All right, let's kick off. So let me do some introductions, and when you speak, if there's anything you want to add about some of the work you've been doing as well, then please feel free to do so. So on my right is Asutu Kumara. She is Deputy Director in the Gambian Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. Next to her is Namiso Nampalala, and Namiso is currently leading the climate finance and climate change portfolio of the Ministry of Economic Planning and Development under the Department of Development Corporation in the government of Eswatini. Next to him is John Narag. John is Director in the International Finance Group of the Philippines Department of Finance. We then have our friend Adam Wang Levine. Adam is Deputy Assistant Secretary for Climate and Infrastructure at the US Treasury. And next to him, Paolo Rodolfi, and she's a Senior Advisor in the Climate Change Group of the World Bank. Could I have a round of applause for the panel? Okay, so let's go straight to questions. So I want to come first to our three fellows. And we've been hearing some of the work that you've been doing. So we know that the V20 has been at the forefront in developing strategies to address the impact of climate change on the most climate vulnerable countries. And of course, we heard about this as well in the introduction about the climate prosperity plans. That's been one of the innovations. I wonder whether each of you could give us your thoughts on some of the efforts in terms of planning and financing climate positive development that you have been involved with, or the governments that you are part of have been involved with. So Satu, can I start with you?
Thank you so much, Honorable Alex. It's really good to see you once more. And it's really a pleasure to be part of this panel. Based on the Gambian perspective, I would say the Gambia has made significant efforts in terms of planning. And really, we have had developed several planning documents, and which are all geared towards addressing the impacts of climate change on the economy, the people, most importantly, and the environment as well. So, for example, I would start with the current National Development Plan we are implementing. It's for the period 2023 to 2027. And in this plan, we have integrated the issues of climate resilience. And this was part of efforts to recover from the COVID pandemic. And I would proudly say this we call the Green Recovery Plan came up because of a policy brief I had co-authored with support or collaboration of the International Institute for Environment and Development in the UK. So yeah, I'm really proud of that. Besides that commendable effort, currently or recently, we have had also developed a long-term vision and long-term climate strategy as well. So because this was a commitment which is part of the Paris Agreement, so that every country is obliged to develop a 2050 climate strategy. So for the case of the Gambia, we started with a vision to lay out what's the roadmap or what would be the roadmap to achieve net emission by 2050. So that's what we first started with. And thereafter, we came to develop a strategy to outline the process. So, and this particular strategy basically builds upon the ambitious nationally determined contribution we had initially formulated, which intends to reduce greenhouse gas emission by about 50%. So, which was very ambitious. I think these are, besides that as well, because Gambia being a least developed country, we are so much affected by the climate crisis. So building resilience is very important. So we had a support from the World Bank, and we developed a strategic program for climate resilience, which basically covers very vulnerable sectors such as agriculture, because about over 70% of the Gambian population depend on agriculture for livelihood. So it covered that sector, and tourism as well, which is the highest contributor to foreign exchange earning. So those two sectors were basically covered in that climate resilience program, because the Gambia, it's low-lying, so coastal erosion is very much affecting the country. And studies have shown that if we don't do nothing, by 2050, we would lose our capital city, which is an island. So we are so much vulnerable. So that resilient plan was also developed, and we also took on board the concerns of vulnerable groups as well, women, youth, and people living with disabilities, and the local communities as well. So in terms of planning, those are key strategy documents we have had. And we are currently started an initiative to work with the V20 to bring all these planning documents together to come up with a climate prosperity plan, which would basically serve as an investment framework for us to be able to have resources to implement the priorities we've set in terms of mitigation, adaptation, and so forth. So in terms of finance, we've also...
I want to come back on sort of finance and debt issues as well in a minute. So I'll do that with the next round, because I think that's a really important point, particularly given what's going on in terms of rising interest rates and basically the debt distress that many countries are facing. So I will come on to that. But I wonder whether, Lemisa, you might want to also tell us some of the work that you've been involved with and that your government has been involved with.
Thank you, Sir Alok. Again, it's a pleasure to meet you again after COP28 and to be part of the panel. I think just like my colleague Isato here has mentioned, that planning is kind of the first step that you need to get right. Because then if you don't have a plan, a grand plan, how to address climate change, then you are just going to be fumbling around, I guess. So yes, I'm from the Ministry of Economic Planning, so planning is definitely my daily bread. And luckily, I think I'm privileged to speak on the fact that I was part of the team that actually drafted the current National Development Plan for Eswatini, which is also a 5-year document from 2023 to 2028. But we have gone a step further in terms of development planning to take the country's NDC and mainstream it onto the National Development Plan. So we have a National Development Plan that has fully integrated the country's NDC. Now, to sort of deal with the issue, sometimes you find that countries suffer from multiplicity of documents or over planning. Now you have a whole lot of policy documents that are all trying to achieve different priorities. But if you have one document that sort of streamlines everything together, so I think that for Eswatini, that has been a game changer, bringing all these priorities and then making sure that climate change is a cross-cutting theme in the National Development Plan. So yeah, I think that has been our biggest strength, the planning part. And also we went a step further to look into now, we have the plan, do we have the institutional capacity to kind of achieve these plans? Because you can have the plan, but without the capacity, whether technically or otherwise, then it will be kind of a difficult task to achieve your plans. So with support from partners, we've gone a step further to kind of now build capacity of ministries like the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Planning, Ministry of Public Service, which are key in the delivery of this plan. As economic planning, we decide the priorities, then the Ministry of Finance puts money in the priorities, and then the Ministry of Public Service make sure that we have the manpower to achieve this plan. So we kind of held some trainings to basically cover areas like understanding climate change vulnerability assessment, and also undertaking climate change mainstreaming into development planning and budgeting. So that has been some of the work that has been done in terms of planning to make sure that we get the plan right, and then we can then make sure that we stick to the priorities.
Very good, thank you. And very sort of wise to make sure that your Treasury department is part of the discussions, because without them in any government, nothing really happens. And I think you made a sort of very important point about the fact that your NDC is effectively sort of overlaid on your economic development plan. And actually, when you listen to Simon Steele, it's one of the things that I think they want effectively for the next round of NDCs for countries to be doing. So you know, you're a trailblazer in that sense. John, let me come to you. You are sort of representing the Philippine government. What is going on there in terms of the planning that's being developed, and tell us also a little bit about, you know, where you have tried something from a planning point of view and it perhaps hasn't worked.
Thank you, Sir Alok. It's a privilege to be here, and thank Boston University, the V20, and of course, so as London. Well, financing follows the plan. So we have lots of plans, and we've intensified the design of these plans, translating the plans into investment and financial strategy. So we have had established new laws to enable both public participation and even private sector participation. We've established a sovereign wealth fund that would is now in the process of incorporating ESG elements into possibly future investments. We have a new PPP code that's energized to allow blended financing. Of course, the level of participation in private sector in the Philippines is very encouraging. In investing on critical infrastructures. And we have a list of 185 flagship projects under the administration, part of which includes investing in flood control management and even encouraging more mass public transportation is very needed in the Philippines, or this part of the Philippines. Part of the plans that we now do is transforming our NDC into an investment plan and financing strategy. We have partly costed our NDC financing strategy, and as of March, we've estimated it to be roughly, I think, around the $72 billion. But that's just a rough estimate for now. And we're trying to identify policies, actions, and measures. And part of those measures is to include transforming or modernizing our energy infrastructure, and of course, increasing adaptive capacities for communities. You know, we're a country of 7,100 islands spread across. We have isolated islands needing this critical infrastructure, even increasing capacities of our agriculture to improve food security. So those are some of our things. What we have tested along is to also strengthen the capacity. It might have not worked before, but we're trying to improve the way we're accessing our or improving our local funds and encouraging, of course, greater participation of the people. And we'll see if we can simplify more on how we enable direct access for our communities and subnational organizations. And public financial management reform is also key. And perhaps in the future, digitalization is a priority of our Secretary of Finance to see if we can streamline more processes and make sure that the funds are directly absorbed and better implemented through concrete and bankable projects. Thank you, Sir Alok.
Great, thank you very much for that, John. So Adam, if I turn to you, you've heard from our fellows some of the work that they're doing, what their countries are doing in terms of advancing effectively clean growth plans for their economies. Can you talk a little about what you in the US Treasury are doing to support these individual countries, and what the plans are for the future? Because obviously one thing is very clear, many of the vulnerable countries are doing what they can to help themselves, but it's also up to us as developed economies to support them.
Sure. And thank you as well for having me here, as well as for Rockefeller Foundation, the V20, BU for convening this and running this program, as we think it's incredibly important from the US Treasury. I would also echo the importance of treasuries across nations. In terms of the specific question, we're trying to think through ways in which the US government can support a lot of what was discussed, and might bring up two separate ideas. One is, I think we probably heard all kinds of panels on country platforms, but we've been thinking about, can we push forward a next generation of country platforms that builds on some of the lessons on previous efforts that donor countries have put forward? And I would just describe maybe four of the key elements that we see as part of that. I think one is, we really want to have ways in which we can support countries that show high levels of ambition, but also tailor these programs to the specific needs of that country. And I think that's one of the lessons that we're really trying to take to heart. I think a second piece of it is, we do want to support countries that are not only putting forward investment plans, but also in this discussion of the NDCs, what are the policy actions that are complementing some of these investments? And so I think a lot of this resonates. And a third piece of it is, I think we're not only thinking about what we as the US government or other donor countries can do, but how can we really coordinate resources across a number of public, private, as well as philanthropic sources. And then the fourth area that's a little bit new is, are there ways where this is hard work, right? I think just seeing previous efforts at this for any country to undertake, and are there ways in which we can, in particular, leverage the MDBs to coordinate some of this activity? We still want this to be country-owned and country-driven, but are there ways in which the MDBs may be able to support and coordinate some of these efforts? And I think we're trying to advance some of this thinking. I participated in a lot of G20 discussions on this topic, which I think is promising, but also we as donor countries are thinking about ways in which we can potentially roll out some of these new platforms. A second area that I would describe is, we talk a lot about the climate finance architecture and all the different pieces of it, particularly the climate funds and the MDBs in private sector. And we're really trying in the G20, in a group that I co-chair, to lead a review on how to make this system work better, particularly for countries, particularly in the V20, as we hear no shortage of stories about how long it takes to get funding, how long it takes to get accredited. And is there a way in which we can do a review that can offer recommendations that offer the foundation of real change in the system, as another aspect of how we can hopefully support these efforts?
Great, Adam, thank you for that. So let me come to you now, Paolo. So you're with the World Bank Group, and the World Bank has obviously made climate and livable planet a key aspect of what the principles that is going to abide by in terms of trying to achieve. And yesterday, I moderated a session where Anshula Kant, your CFO, was there, and she hinted that some good announcements will be coming out of these spring meetings. So we're all looking forward to hearing those. And if you've got a preview, feel free to share it. But can you talk a little bit about, because maybe not everyone in the audience understands, but how does the World Bank work with vulnerable countries? You've got, various sort of planning documents that you put together. I mean, just give us a sort of an indication of, or maybe how you're working with some of these countries in supporting them get more climate finance.
Thank you, Alok, and congratulations on this excellent initiative. And very happy to interact with the V20 group, which is now V68 group, since my first engagement at the Africa Climate Summit last September. So let me tell you, first of all, the World Bank finances low-income countries, 75 of them, with grants and low interest rate loans that have now been, as of this week, extended to 50 years. We have a new facility, part of the new announcements by our president on the 12th of April, that these basically low interest rate financing will take a new dimension for countries that have limited access to financing. 39% of these financing goes to climate. That equals $12.4 billion every year. At COP28, the World Bank raised the level of ambition from 39% to 45% by 2025. We committed to financing climate in all countries, low income and middle income countries as well. Now, what that means is that we will continue to vet every single project that the World Bank finances for countries based on their priorities. We will continue to finance those projects, but we will also, we will continue to vet projects for Paris alignment. In addition, we will finance 45% of our commitments for climate. In addition, we're going to have climate components in almost 100% of our projects. The way we work, we are part of the MDB collaboration, and together we support the global effort of financing the country's NDCs. So as we approach the third round of the NDCs, as Simon Steele has reminded us in several occasions lately, we need to focus on supporting countries do exactly what I understand from John the Philippines are doing, which is to convert these plans into real investment plans. So not just strategic priorities, but how do we finance these strategic priorities? The World Bank leverages for every dollar of IDA, leverages $3.6 on the markets. So for every, for the commitments that donors make to the World Bank, we're able to leverage on the markets and bring in more money to finance climate and development, which are strictly interlinked for countries. One example of such climate priorities, Bangladesh, a country severely hit by cyclones recurrently, has discussed as a priority as part of their adaptation climate financing to have the World Bank support their early warning systems as well as their physical recovery efforts. So as part of the early warning systems, we have been able to finance Bangladesh as a result. The last cyclone that hit Bangladesh in 2020, Ampha, only had, I say only, it's never, you know, it's always too many, 20 victims compared to, 50 years ago when we were in the millions, right? So it is a step forward. Naturally, infrastructures need to be also strengthened. So we invested $1.9 billion in addition to the early warning systems in Bangladesh to create barriers for coastal communities to be protected. But also we created shelters and we strengthened rural roads and infrastructure. So these are all projects that are discussed with governments, and we have a game changer sort of success stories website if you're interested in more. And as Isatu said, these plans are very important. Yeah. So we really work based on the government's plans. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's actually a very good point, because that's the one thing you always hear from many governments is that they don't want something imposed on them. They want it to be a partnership. So I think that's a really important point. Adam, you mentioned reform of the financial architecture. So I'm now going to ask each of our fellows, what reform, and of course we've got a few minutes, so I don't think we want a sort of full thesis, but let me ask you, what is the one thing in terms of reform of the financial architecture that you would want, which would actually help your country get more finance faster? So, Satu, why don't you start first?
Thank you, Honorable Alex. Before I respond to your question, I would just want to underscore the fact that we need to recognize the inadequacy of the voices and participation of developing countries and the global south, especially least developed countries in the process as it exists now. So I think, and that has had an implication on the adequacy of the financial architecture as we speak now. So I think that needs to be recognized. So given our LDC context, I don't think it's fair to ask me one, because we have numerous challenges or elements we would want.
I'm going to ask you to stick to your top one, because otherwise we'll be here for. I mean, I can understand the challenge, because you're right. It's not a question just one, but I'm going to try and see whether you can give me one top one.
Okay, I would say improve access and quality of finance, because as we speak right now, the access to finance to our countries is very limited, and based on actual findings, it has been revealed that the amount of finance that reaches the lower income countries, because I'm from an LDC country, it's far less compared to middle income or higher income countries. So we need equity in the allocation of resources. That's one thing.
Yes.
And quality of finance, I would say we really need to enhance or increase the amount of resources that is required for climate action. And these resources needs to get to the local communities who need it most and understand or faces the impacts of climate change. And lastly, I would say the finance should be grant and not loans.
Okay, that's pretty clear. Grants, not loans. Namiso.
Thank you. For me, like I said in COP, money. That's all we need. We need the space. We need the fiscal space, which we don't have right now. So there's a whole lot of, meanwhile, we commend the efforts of the World Bank. For instance, we do have a country partnership framework with the World Bank, which basically supports our national priorities. But is it flexible enough? The context in most of our countries is always changing. But are these partnership frameworks flexible enough? Maybe that's a discussion for another day.
Okay, let me sort of push on this a little bit then. But let's talk about debt. What's your? I mean, what needs to happen to ensure there's more fiscal space released with many of the countries, some of course in your part of the world which are facing a real sort of debt crisis?
We need debt relief. It's that simple. We want to do a lot of things. If we are already indebted, so you are telling us you'll give us a loan. We already don't have the money, so just give us we want to achieve our climate plan, so swap our debt for these climate projects, because they are viable. We know the context in these countries. We are vulnerable. We are losing livelihoods now, not in the future. We are losing them now. Our people are already in poverty, and climate change is just hitting on the already poor. So relieve our debt, give us the grants. That's all we need.
Okay, that's pretty clear. John, do you share that view? What's your?
Well, each country, of course, the Philippines is still equally vulnerable, both to not just climate, but also natural disasters. Yeah, I share the views of my colleagues in the V20. For my view, it would be the structures that work and make things simplified and mainstream. So I think that would help, address how to access financing best, how to deploy grants, along with other solutions that would work or be suitable and as V20 would have it, the fit for purpose, considering the economic, the social conditions, and of course the appetite of the market that would have been developed within each country. So that's it.
Great, thank you. So, I mean, the message is pretty clear, Adam. Show us the money. What's the Treasury going to do to show us the money?
So we at the US Treasury tried to articulate a view on what we were seeing in the international financial architecture last week. And in the interest of time, we'll try to distill it to the key points. But as an overlay, I think we recognize what's happening, right? I think if you look at where we are in terms of net flows, they're negative, right? And there's more money coming out of a lot of countries, particularly in the global south, than is going in, and it's at its highest rate in decades. And debt service as a share of exports and revenue is exceptionally high, and something needs to change. It's the premise that we started from. And we tried to articulate, I'm not going to go into every piece of it, so maybe I'll do 2 points on it, but it's on our website. But one piece of it that we tried to commit to was a pledge from official creditors bilaterally to commit to net positive flows. So make sure that there's more money in than it's coming out. And as a part of that piece of it, we also emphasized that the money going in should be more grant and ODA based, not loans. It's one part. I think a second piece of it is thinking about the private side of this too, because the bilateral official creditors are one piece, but what can we do to incentivize private flows into these markets at affordable? I think we talked about the quality of financing, not just the quantity, at affordable rates. And I think 2 pieces of that is one, ways in which we can work not only with our own DFIs, but also with the MDBs on credit enhancements that can mobilize some of that financing at affordable rates, as well as think about protections for some of the structuring of this financing. One example of this is climate resilient debt clauses. Can certain things trigger when certain countries are exposed to natural disasters or certain climate risks? There's more in this speech. I think we're all looking at happy hour and I might need to go too, but that's at least some piece of it. But there's more pieces to it, including this country platform discussion as well.
Brilliant, thank you. It's just as well that you're not facing what we're facing. I'm trying to speed up the discussion. Adam, thank you very much for that. And Adam, you mentioned you want to see net inflows rather than outflows, but the problem is that there's a whole bunch of countries that in the last year have been seeing outflows, developing nations seeing outflows to developed countries. So, Paolo, if I could just ask you, you set out very well the work and how the World Bank interacts with developing nations. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you are going to support the V20 climate prosperity plans as they come through? Is there anything else you want to add to what you said earlier?
Thank you, Locke. So it's very important to focus also on spending better and the technical and methodological support that we can provide based on our policy dialogue with countries. We base our interactions with countries on CCDRs, which are country climate and development reports that are based on analytics. And what we see is that, yes, the negative flows, as Adam was saying, but we also see negative subsidies, and we see a lot of them. So understanding where government money that is so scarce in the global south and in the global north is going, and understanding that it's going to the wrong priorities, I think is extremely important. Repurposing those subsidies in agriculture from pesticides and fertilizers that worsen the climate situation towards the same targeted population of farmers, but for better climate smart agriculture is one shift that would be extremely helpful. So we look forward to working based on country platforms and LTSs that have just been launched with the V20 to really bring our experience and analytical work in this area. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Paolo. So before we break open the bottles of mineral water behind us, I want to just allow this stellar audience to ask a couple of questions. Does anybody have any questions? And if you do, please just put your hand up and then say who you are and what organization you represent. And then if you want to direct the question at any one of our panelists, feel free to do so. So anybody want to ask a question? I mean, I know it's almost the end of the spring meetings, but yes. Oh, we got two. Oh, yeah. Let's go there first, and then at the back.
Thank you, Mozam Malik from the World Resources Institute. I'd like to ask the fellows actually what their vision is for how country platforms might work. Adam talked about that, and it's something that's been discussed widely, and the bank have been involved. So I've got some sense of, from the international donor community, what kind of vision there might be. But from your perspective, how would you like to see this develop? I know that there's work going on within the V20 group, but how would you like that to come together, and what kind of response would you like from your international partners?
Yeah. So if you don't know, sort of Moz was also a Director General at the Department for International Development in the UK government, and we worked together when I was Secretary of State. So he is someone who has deep knowledge. So who would like to, which of you three fellows want to kick off on that? Yeah, John, you want to?
Well, okay, I'll try. Thank you for the question, Norbal. Well, for us to make the country platform together, we have to weave things together. I heard yesterday in one of the sessions we attended, there are more than 80 vertical funds or global climate funds. Of course, part of that can only be supporting directly for Asia or ASEAN. So if you are able to simplify those things and support solid adaptation and even mitigation plans, then that would make things better and easier. It's one thing of developing your plans. It's one thing of implementing the plans. We realize that while we're good at writing plans, it's not easy to translate it into bankable list of projects. Ultimately, that's just the list. But once you get to the list, you have to implement it, and you have to implement it. You have to have the capacities, the right people to implement it, and strengthen the core of government units partnering with other stakeholders, CSOs, NGOs, and in the case of a country, our subnational entities or local government units. So every step of the way, we have to find a way to make sure that we're resilient in our economy, in our finances, in our social, and even our physical structures. Thank you.
Great.
I think I would probably just echo my colleagues' words that I think vertical and horizontal integration is very key. And of course, whole of government, whole of society approach. And for instance, in the context of Eswatini, our emissions is 0.007, James Bond, if you will. So if you tell us to focus on mitigation, the impact is very small. We need to adapt now because we are living with the consequences now. So we need, our priority is adaptation, and at the lowest level, because that's where the impact is most visible.
Great. I just say, of course, James Bond's emissions are probably greater than your country's, given the amount of things he blows up. But anyway.
All right, thank you. I think for me, my first point would be related to his point rather, and which is aligning finance to our country needs, which is a gap currently, because usually, like he said, adaptation is our needs, but most of the finance is being directed to mitigation rather than adaptation. So really, finance would be aligned to our needs. And besides that as well, it will be very important that our national capacities and domestic architectures are also enhanced to ensure that climate finance flows to the lower level or local level where it is needed most, because studies have revealed that only about 1.7% of finance flows to the local level. So this is an issue, and we really need to ensure that this is addressed.
Great. So I will take that question at the back, sir.
Hi, Gianleo Frisari, Sustainable Debt Specialist at the World Bank. Congratulations to the colleague from Philippines. I think it's great to see an NDC turning in investment plan. I think we've been repeating that, so it's great to see that coming. Now that you've done that, can you elaborate a bit more whether that is materializing in terms of access to better finance? Like, have you got any feedback from investors? Because that's the first milestone. Now, what you're getting in terms of investor feedback about investing in your country, maybe through a sovereign green bond. We've seen those working in elsewhere in many other countries. Thank you.
This is again for the fellows, right? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Well, we're about to start with the NDC implementation strategy. We also have a national adaptation plan that supports that, and we have enabling environment, and we've tested issuance of sustainability-linked bonds. In the future, it could be simplified, or at least could be directed more for green or blue even, and even sukuk bonds. We're testing the waters in that case. But before that happens, what we're doing in the NDC implementation strategy is just based on a lot of lists that we have, a lot of plans. We're just making sure these are more directed to and more strategic in terms of 6 sectors, including cross-cutting actions. So some of these are already being implemented, some of these already in the pipeline stages, but some would need more design and more perhaps feasibility studies at one point, and see where even both public and private sector can work together. So.
Great.
Thank you. I think the question was mostly directed to John because they have but yes, as a Swatini, you also do have actually we do have an NTC investment plan that we just I think it's almost finalized. I think there should be a validation workshop this week, and I think the figure is around 900, between 900 and $1 billion. That's the cost of our NTC. And yes, I think just like in the case of John, some projects, programs, the government is already funding from government coffers. Some of them, we are looking to do feasibility studies because the word bankability is always thrown at our faces each time we try to mobilize climate finance. So we are also grappling with that. But yeah, I think that's the maybe the other issue that I may want to highlight is the issue of standardization within these climate funds. You go to GCF, they want a set of things, they tell you their investment criteria. You go to the GEF, they also want their own things. But the problem is one, it's climate change, but they want different things from you to show that your problem is climate change. So that we might want to look at that because it's making things a whole lot difficult.
That's a very good point. Sadi, is there anything you wanted to add?
For the case of the Gambia, we are yet to develop an investment plan. However, we are currently having investors showing interest in the NDC implementation plan we had developed, because we recently had a project or an investment from the European Investment Bank, whereby they supported the government in trying to solarize 1,000 public schools and 100 health centers, which is, I think, the first in Africa. So which was because of the ambitious NDC we had come up with and the implementation plan we had put in place. However, that's why during my previous intervention, I've said that given the series of plans or different plans we have, we want to use the CPP, the climate prosperity process, to try to consolidate all those plans to serve as an investment plan to be able to address the climate crisis in our country. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now I'm going to bring the formal proceedings to a close now, but we can carry on over a soft drink, discussing these issues as well. Yes, but so I was going to give actually the final word to Adam and Paolo, if you wanted to say anything in response to what you've heard over the last few questions from the fellows.
Yeah, just wanted to thank you again for hosting this. And I had somewhat of a reaction when you mentioned the GCF in the sense of, I think I abbreviated some of how I described this review, but it's looking to address exactly what you described in terms of, we've heard it from a number of countries, like in terms of the different processes, and is there a way of streamlining this that could work better for countries? While this is a G20 review, we very much recognize that many of you in the audience are the ones that interact with the funds and whose insights we want to more focus on. So my contact is with the conference organizers. Please find me. I think we'd really like to incorporate your views on how the climate finance architecture could work better. We've talked to the V20 Secretariat, but even individually would like to reach out to every country.
Fabulous. Thank you. That's a great outcome from this panel. Paolo, is there anything else you wanted to add at all?
No, thank you. This has been really interesting, and I've learned a lot about your perspectives in reality. So we look forward to continuing to work together through our country offices around the world, close to you, as well as through us here. And hopefully we'll continue to collaborate, and do reach out anytime. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, can you show your appreciation for a fabulous panel?
Sorry.